about second breakfast.
Time for second breakfast.
What's up, everybody? Monster from Breakdowns for Breakfast here with another tasty second breakfast. Bear with me a little bit today. I'm a little under the weather, or maybe it's just allergies. The pollen is notorious down here in North Carolina right now. So I sound a little stuffy, but an article just recently got published by a website called Metal Injection, which is a pretty popular rock and metal outlet that I felt I needed to react to or give my 2 cents on, because it's an interesting article. Essentially, the name of the article is 10 nu metal bands that should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, as the NuMetal Monster, obviously I have an affinity for nu metal that not everybody shares. However, I do feel like if we're going to have the conversation about important bands, important to rock and metal music, you can't deny that, for better or for worse, depending on how you look at things, nu metal played a huge part in heavy music, especially back when it first kind of got rolling in the 90s and early 2000s. So I did hear another podcast talk about this list, and I did hear the bands that they listed, but it was in one ear and out the other. I wasn't paying that close of attention. So this isn't exactly a blind react. I kind of, and besides, think of the top 10 nu metal bands you can think of, and that's probably what's going to be here. So I'm not expecting Head P or Primer 55 or Darwin's Waiting Room to be on this list, nor in all fairness should they be, of course. But anyway, I just thought I would take a look at the 10 they listed, give some brief thoughts on if I agree, disagree, and then just sort of like what the likelihood of it actually ever happening would be. So the first band they have listed is Linkin Park. And I can see both ways on that. I almost feel like had they not reformed with Emily, that maybe you could make a case for it in the future. Especially when you consider how Linkin Park sort of shifted their sound from nu metal to more of almost like a U2 stadium rock kind of thing on some of their later albums. It had a lot of mainstream success, So I could kind of see that being in the conversation. However, now that they've sort of come back out with Emily and sort of reinvented themselves, they're kind of sort of almost a quote unquote new band in some ways that I don't know. Like that seems like kind of a maybe for me. I get why they would be mentioned here. And also, this article by Metal Injection, it was written by, let me give the guys props, Greg Kinelty? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It was published February 25th, so about a month ago. He gives a nice paragraph on all these bands, so if you want to hear his opinion, go read the article. It's cool. I'll try to put a link to this article in the when we upload the video. So Linkin Park, I would, if I just got to give a straight yes or no answer, at least for the foreseeable future, I would say no. Korn, on the other hand, I feel almost the opposite of. I would say Korn, of any of the nu metal bands, probably deserves it the most. Again, for better or for worse, they're the ones that kind of created this sound. I mean, yes, you've got Faith No More and Chili Peppers and Rage Against the Machine a little bit before Korn, but the first band to really have the quote-unquote nu metal title was Korn. And so when you think of how many Grammy nominations they've had, how many Grammys they've won, you kind of have to just say, how could they not be? And I also think that Korn over the years has gotten a little bit more, I don't want to say mainstream, because they've never been super mainstream. But, back in the TRL days, you had Freak on a Leash and Got the Life. And then when Issues came out, Falling Away From Me. So they had that, massive, major, mainstream success. And over the years, they don't you don't hear them on the radio and stuff like you used to, but they play these huge arenas and stuff. So, I mean, I would say yes. I would say if not right away, soon. I mean, out of all of them, I think they have the best argument for it. Okay, System of a Down. This is a tough one for me because I have said on the show before that System of a Down is just not my favorite flavor of nu metal. I like them just fine. I think I agree that Toxicity is a really, special album for a lot of reasons, but they just never wowed me. They were never one of my favorite nu metal bands. So I can see why other people would say yes, but I would probably lean more towards no. Another reason I would say no is because the output is kind of minimal. As of right now, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think they only have 4 studio albums and then one called Steal This Album, which was like a collection of B-sides and demos and stuff. So, yes, they have also won a Grammy, which is cool, but I don't know that they have the legacy or the influence. That's another important factor here. Linkin Park and Korn influenced a ton of other bands, and you can hear that in modern rock and metal today. System of a Down is almost so unique that you sort of don't have a whole lot of bands that sound like them, which is a good thing for sure, but I would say no to System of a Down. Now, let's say in the next 4 or 5 years, they put out some epic album that changes, could possibly change my opinion on that. But as of right this second, I'm going to say no to System of a Down. Slipknot. Now, this one is interesting because Slipknot, on those first couple records, the first album in Iowa, ain't nobody in their right mind ever thought Slipknot would become a band that would be on the radio, that would be playing in coliseums, that would be as mainstream as they have become. Corey Taylor is I mean, he's a personality now. Like you see him all the time pop up on things in interviews, and he's charismatic, and he's, when you listen to some of the lyrics on those first couple albums, hell, even some of their more recent stuff, there's some unhinged shit. And the fact that they have been able to, they keep the masks on, they keep the theatrics going, but they still write such good music that they're still, prominently featured all over the place. That says a lot. Now, with all that being said, I think at the end of the day, there's just a little bit too much, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if it's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame worthy. I don't necessarily think they don't deserve it as far as longevity, as far as, kind of just proving the doubters wrong because of, being this extreme and still, yes, they have softened up a little bit. And the stuff that hit the radio does not sound like, People Equal Shit or the Heretic Anthem or something like that off the, first couple albums. But even on that first album, Wait and Bleed was a real solid, catchy. I mean, yes, it was heavy, but it had a big pop hook. And yeah, so even from the beginning, Slipknot was kind of making a case for longevity and mainstream success. So, I mean, I don't know. Me personally, I feel like because of the costumes, because of some of the lyrical content over those first few records, I don't know. I personally, I think I would give it to Slipknot before I gave it to System of a Down. I mean, me personally. So I can see that kind of either way. Disturbed. No, absolutely not. No, thank you. I don't hate Disturbed. I think The Sickness is a very cool album. It's wacky and kind of, fun for what it is. They've had some other good songs over the years. They're a little bit, I think we've talked about this before, they're kind of cheek-to-cheek butt rock nu metal. They started off much more new and then got a little more kind of just rock, arena rock, butt rock kind of stuff. But, you know, still putting out records, still drawing crowds. They've got a huge following. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame level, though, I don't think so. I don't think they have anything that's enough. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that they have a following or a catalog that is so remarkably memorable that you would make a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame case for it. I would say no to that one. Limp Bizkit. Yes, unequivocally, hell yes. No, I wouldn't have thought so, to begin with. But I feel like this second wave of love for Limp Bizkit kind of gives me sort of a different opinion on that. Because obviously those first, you know, especially those first 3 records, $3 Bill Y'all, it's kind of wacky, but, you know, especially Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish, kind of like the Korn thing. Love it or hate it, if you're glad they did it or you're glad they were mainstream or not. It really changed music for a lot of people and for a short period of time there. And the fact that, you know, 20 plus years after those records come out, they're touring with Metallica, playing in football stadiums. So it's kind of like, you know, when you think of their catalog and the songs and, like, you know, Break Stuff and Nookie and the, you know, is that rock and roll royalty? Is that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? It's kind of hard to say for sure, but I mean, if you think about their longevity, their first record was in 97. From what I understand, they're working on a new record now. So, I mean, maybe, I feel like Korn and Limp Bizkit are sort of, everybody talks about the big 4, and I don't know, like, that could be a whole other episode, and maybe I can get some of my buddies to come in here and argue with me about that. But I think Korn and Limp Bizkit are kind of like the 1-2 punch, you know. So, I would say no, but my personal love for Limp Bizkit, sure, why not? All right, next is Deftones. Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one for me because it's very similar to my thoughts on System of a Down. I get why people love Deftones. I do. And I like some of their output. I gave the newest album, something music, private music. I gave it a pass and I thought it was okay. There's 2 or 3 really good songs on that album, and then the rest are kind of what Deftones have kind of become. And what they've kind of become is not, it incorporates nu metal, but even Deftones don't like to be called nu metal. I think because of Adrenaline, Around the Fur, White Pony, that whole section, beginning of their career, you can't deny it. You got the detuned guitars, the hip-hop beats, you know, the scratching and the programming. So, I mean, maybe if Deftones wants to argue the nu metal thing now, I can see that. But they 100% started off as nu metal. And again, it's just not my thing. Like, I get why so many people love them. And I do really enjoy, you know, I would say I kind of unequivocally really, really love Around the Fur. I think that is their best album for me. And then I like most of Adrenaline, most of White Pony. And then as the years progress, I can always find a couple of songs on every record I like. I remember a buddy of mine asked me to do a deep dive on Diamond Eyes, and I did. And I actually came away enjoying that way more than I thought I would. So I'm kind of 50-50 on Deftones. Now, as far as making it into the Hall of Fame, I would say no. But I could also see it at some point happening, especially as they've sort of continued to somehow continue to get more popular as time has gone on. So, yeah, I mean, I would say no, but I could see it potentially happening. Next up is Papa Roach. And I mean, I would say no. Without even going super deep into it, I would say no. Obviously, Last Resort is one of the biggest nu metal songs in history. And they've gone on to be more of just a mainstream rock band. And I, for one, really like a lot of their stuff. Their album from, I want to say maybe 2021 or 3 or something, called Ego Trip, I thought was damn good. Like, that was, to me, one of their best records since their early days. And they're still putting out quality music and quality records. To me, though, when I think of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think of something that's really like genre defining and really just stands the test of time. And while Last Resort has, 100% done that, and then they've also had some other songs like the Scars Remind Us. I think it's just called Scars. Like, those are songs you still hear on the radio all the time. And so I'm not saying that they don't have longevity and they haven't stood the test of time. I don't know. I not yet. I'm not saying they couldn't reach that point, but I would say right now I would say no to Papa Roach. Next up is Evanescence, another big fat stinking no. I have made my opinions on Evanescence very clear. I think they are not great. I think Amy Lee has a great voice, but I think the music is kind of bland and boring, and I don't even consider it nu metal. I think they've had one big hit. They've had a couple of other songs that the average person would probably not even be able to tell you the name, or that they knew it was Evanescence. So I would say no. Again, I think Amy Lee is obviously, she's sort of like I mentioned earlier about Corey Taylor. She's kind of a personality. She's very talented. I see why so many people like her and like Evanescence, but Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I would definitely put a no on that one. And there's one more, and this is fun. Mudvayne. So, what was this author's name? Buddy, cool pool. Very, very interesting. No way. I don't see Mudvayne ever in a million years making it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I would love to see it. I would love to be proven wrong and have ding in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That would be wonderful. I've seen Mudvayne live. I've always really liked them. I think LD50 is fantastic. I think the album right after it, The End of All Things to Come, I think is what's called. I think that's a fantastic record. I think Mudvayne is highly underrated. I don't think they will ever get anywhere near the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, even though talent-wise and songwriting-wise, they're better than a lot of the bands on this list. I mean, they really just truly are. But when you get into the politics of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and those kinds of things, I don't see this Mudvayne ever being the type of band to make it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But hey, if the wild card, I guess you would say here, would be Mudvayne, and it would be kind of interesting. So that is the list that our buddy here, Greg Kennelty, again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, buddy. Cool list. Very, very interesting. Something to think about. As a rock fan, metal fan, and especially, sort of a nu metal apologist, I think this is a conversation worth having. You have to be a band for a certain amount of years. You have to have a certain amount of clout and influence and hits and all that stuff. And a lot of the bands on this list do. You might think of them as sort of, silly, or, if you're a metal purist, some of these bands probably piss you off. But there's an argument to be made for some of these bands. So I'm glad I saw this article. Please comment. Let me know what nu metal bands you think deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'd love to have a discussion with some of you guys about that. Think that would be fun. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I hope you enjoyed. And hope if anybody else is dealing with this pollen stuff and these allergies, I hope you're taking it in stride and feeling better. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging out, and I hope you have a great day.